Well, hey everybody, welcome to Epiphone Excellente. About 10 months later, I did a 6-month update on the Hummingbird, and I wanted to do an update on the Epiphone Excellente that I picked up, because I know it's been about 10 months because I just went and looked, and I reviewed this guitar the day I got it in. So it said it was 10 months ago, and so I don't have any reason to doubt that, right? But I did want to talk a little bit about this guitar and how I feel about it some 10 months later. This is a fascinating instrument for me, because undoubtedly it is the least expensive guitar I've ever bought that had any flash to it, you know. Mother of pearl inlays, a pick guard that is just incredible from a design standpoint, and just again the appointments on this thing, these tuners on this guitar, which I showed in the last video, which are pretty impressive. Kluson, and they look like Gibson Kluson to me, but this thing has solid Ovangkol back and sides, which I didn't know in the first video, but because I'd never heard of Ovangkol. But the more I look at it, the more I realize, after doing a little bit of studying on the net, if you can believe what you read, Ovangkol is in that rosewood family. So makes sense, right? Because the one Loretta Lynn had, and I can say had now because of when I first did this, the very first video, she was still with us, and now she's gone. But the one she had was built out of rosewood, right? Back and sides with a Sitka spruce top. And this one is Ovangkol back and sides with a Sitka spruce top. I'll tell you a few things that has really gotten my attention about it. So early on, the first day I got this thing, I was so shocked by it that I don't know how good that review was, okay? I'm not sure this one's going to be much better, but I'm going to do my best. I'm going to say that this guitar feels bigger to me than my Hummingbird. It's a square-shouldered Dreadnought, but I believe for some reason, I don't know why, but it just feels a little bit bigger to me. It's got a little weight to it, like the Hummingbird has, okay? This one was built in Indonesia at the Masterbuilt factory there in the custom shop there in Indonesia. But I will tell you that I have done one thing to this guitar besides change the strings. And so people don't always see the text box that I put up, so I'll just mention it. I use on all of my acoustics Martin Retro 12s. That's what I put on them. That's a light gauge string, but it's the pre-war design, that Manel that they used, and I love the way these Martin Retro 12s sound on these guitars. But that's the strings that I use. You've got a mother of pearl blocked inlay right here on this headstock. You've got the gold plated tuners. You've got a neck that is, I can't remember what they call this out as, but clearly you can count and see that this is like 7 pieces right here. This is maple and walnut. So the small strips you see are walnut, and then the lighter color is the maple. So it's got a maple neck on it. I've got bone pins in it. I've got a bone saddle. I've got a bone nut on this guitar. And I keep this thing humidified, folks. And let me say this while I'm on the channel here, and I've got this handy, if you don't mind me reaching and just pretending like I'm at home, right? You see these? Yeah, I think these are Diodaros. They're called humidipacks. Now, when you get these, you really, for the first time, if you get a brand new guitar, you want to get the box that this comes in, a full box that has the sleeves and the jackets for you to slide these little brown packets into. So what it'll come with is a kind of like a bag, right? There's one on each side, and you drop one of these brown packets into each side, and then you loop it between strings 2 and 3 and 5 and 4. Okay. And you drape it over the guitar and set it down in there flat. Do it flat, and then then you'll have a single sleeve that'll come with it, and you will take that the last humidipack and drop it in that sleeve and put it down in the neck. Okay. And what this does is keeps the humidity of the guitar regulated at about 40 to 45% humidity, I think, somewhere in that general vicinity. For those of you that know about woods, you know that there's a moisture there that needs to be maintained, not exceeded, not less than, but about in that general vicinity. I've got a Seagull Rustic, I think is what it's called. I can't remember exactly the model of that guitar, but it's one that I take outside. At some point, I'm going to do a review on that guitar. Yeah, I think I paid $160 for it from a guy, and he had mounted a pickup right here, and it has 2 volume and a tone knob on it. It's pretty impressive for what I paid for it, all right? And I don't think you can touch those things new for anywhere near that. But that's the guitar that I take out on the back porch on days when the humidities may not be just right for me and the temperature might not be just right. So, because there's no way I would take this guitar outside unless the temperature was about, say, less than 75 degrees, more than 68 degrees, and the humidity was sitting in that sweet spot of about 45%, at which point, okay, I'll roll the dice and take a guitar outside, you know. But this is what I use, and this guitar's had them in there since the day it arrived at my house. So if you don't get these, and these are about, I think the replacement packs are, I don't know, 15, 20 bucks, something like that. Now the initial investment, you're going to get the sleeves with it. You're probably going to pay 30, 35 bucks for a box that has the sleeves and has a package of these in them. But from that point forward, for your guitar, you only need to order the replacements because now you have the sleeves, right? To droop down and drop into the guitar. At some point, I may do a video just on the humidipacks and show how I put them in and all that kind of thing. But look, folks, that's not rocket science, right? So, but it is, if you don't control the humidity in your guitar room, you need something like this. So every case I've got lined up on the wall over here has humidipacks in them. All right, those guitars do, because I care about my guitars and I want to make sure that they don't have any issues. So I like most people in life, or a lot of people in life, I learned things the hard way. Okay, I had a J45 standard. Gibson J45 standard. It was the first Gibson I had bought in many, many years, and I played it inside. I played it outside. I had the guitar in my hands all the time, no matter where I was at. So if I was out on the back porch sipping a glass of peach tea, I had that J45 out there with me. Well, I got a little too much humidity in that guitar from taking it outside, and the back part of the guitar swole up a little bit. Right, and I could never get it to come back down. Once you bulge back here, there's almost no coming back from it. You can try. I was unsuccessful, and that's when I thought, because I'd taken it to a luthier, and he said, he goes, "Did you get this guitar wet?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Wet." And I said, no, I don't think so. He said, you been playing it outside a lot? And I said, yes, sir. And he said, well, that's probably what did it. You know, if you get it out and the humidity's too high. Because I remember one morning I took it out back, had my coffee and everything, and I could feel a little moisture on it. And you may go, well, you knucklehead, you should have known better than that. Yeah, I should have, but I didn't. I just never thought about that kind of thing. I never owned a lot of guitars, all right? I always had a guitar, or maybe I might have had two guitars. But trust me, they were under $300. You know, I never bought real expensive guitars before. And to me, real expensive is when you start getting over that $700-800 mark, you're starting to invest some money into something that you definitely want to try to take care of. So I got on YouTube, and because he had suggested this thing of humidifying these guitars, and I didn't quite understand what he was saying, but I got on YouTube and started YouTubing it, and that's when I figured out about these humidipacks. So perhaps I'm preaching on that a little too long, but I can't bring that up enough, because these guitars right now are going up in value. So when I bought this guitar, I think tax, title, and license out the door, I ended up giving less than about $1,200 for it, maybe $1,200 with a hard case. Because remember, don't ask me why, because I can't explain this other than it's how you control cost. This guitar does not come with a case. I don't know. I wished I could understand that. I think even if I was a retailer, I would say, no, I'm not selling those guitars without a case. But they'll ship you this guitar without a case. And if you're somebody who thought, well, if I just get a case, it's just going to sit around and take up and occupy space, get out of that mindset. Get the case. Put your guitar in the case every night before you go to bed. Put that guitar up, and put the humidipacks in it, because this wood will maintain its shape if you do that. If you don't, you will do what I did. You will ruin your guitar before all is said and done, and you will be. I can't tell you how disappointed I was when that Gibson J45 was ruined. Now think about it, folks. Now that's not a cheap guitar. I don't think you can touch a Gibson J45 right now standard for under $2,700. So they're not inexpensive. But anyway, I learned my lesson on it. It cost me a couple of grand there, but I learned my lesson about it. Now back to this guitar. So this one, this Excellente and the inspired by Gibson Hummingbird. You'll notice this has a kind of a blue sticker. It may be green or something. I don't know. Let me look. I think that's a blue sticker in there. The inspired by Gibson Hummingbird. And it's important to note on these inspired by Gibsons at Epiphone, we're talking acoustic here. Unless it's the J45, the Hummingbird, and the J200. Unless it's one of those three models, you can't count on inspired by Gibson, meaning that it was built in Indonesia in the custom factory. It may have been built in China. And that I have recently discovered. The inspired by Gibson line, J45, Hummingbird, and J200 are all built in the Indonesian custom shop. And they are phenomenal playing guitars. Now, not all of them, depending on who you talk to, have the greatest sound, but they play splendidly. And they're crafted very, very well. Pretty high standard of craftsmanship on those guitars. The J45 is the lesser of that, but the inspired by Gibson Hummingbird that is the sweetest sounding guitar that I own, hands down. It plays like a Gibson Hummingbird. You know how you pick up a Gibson guitar and when you fret it immediately, you know, you're pretty sure you got one in your hands at that point. You could close your eyes, and just by fretting and strumming the guitar, you would know you got a quality instrument in your hands, and you can tell by the punch of a Gibson Dreadnought that you're holding a Gibson. That's that inspired by Gibson Hummingbird. I picked up a J45 inspired by Gibson tonight, Epiphone at Guitar Center in Tyler, Texas, and where I've picked them up before. And I like the way they play. But I would say that they're priced about where they should be. That's about a $600-700 guitar. Not a bad guitar. Plays very, very nice. Sounds good. Sounds really good. But it's probably worth about $600 or $700. The Inspired by Gibson Hummingbird is probably worth about $2,000 more than they're charging for it. That's how impressive that guitar is. As a matter of fact, if it wasn't for the weight on that guitar, you might not know you're not holding a Gibson Hummingbird in your hands. Because the Inspired by line is a little heavier than, I say a little, probably considerably heavier than their Gibson counterparts, okay? This guitar, this Excellente, is no different. Now, it's not super heavy, but it's got a little bit of weight to it, okay? And stunning it is. It's absolutely stunning. And it's got a really sweet sound to it. I did one adjustment on this after I changed strings. I took a little bit of relief out of this neck because I felt like it had just a shade too much relief in it. And I thought I was only going to go 1/8 of a turn on the truss rod. I ended up going 1/2 a turn. I think they kind of ship them with more relief in there. You'd have to be the judge of that when you get yours, if you get one. But I took about 1/2 a turn, tightened it up, and took a little of that relief out of the neck. And the fretting was a little bit better on the guitar. I still have one other thing I'm probably going to do to this one. As you can see, it's beautiful. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. It has a great sound to it. It is a little quieter, a little more reserved in sound than the Inspired by Gibson Hummingbird that I've got, Epiphone. It's a wider, fatter neck than what's on that Hummingbird as well. And so this thing's pretty chunky. Remember, they built this for Loretta Lynn back in, the 60s, maybe late 60s, early 70s, something like that, when they built hers. I think the only thing that's left for me to do is I think I'm going to probably take it to a luthier instead of doing this myself, because I want to make sure it's absolutely perfect and right. I wouldn't want to hurt this guitar. And I'm probably going to have that nut shaved a little bit, and I'm going to bring the nut down just a tad. Now, maybe I'm wrong about this, and some of you luthiers watching the channel, you can tell me, but if as I fret, that fret's really nice right there. But after I play this thing for a little while, once I do that for a while, my fingers start to get a little sore. Now, folks, I play guitar every day, every single day. And so if I'm in the office and I'm working, when I get done working, I pull a guitar out and I sit down and I don't put it up till I go to bed. I'm playing it all the time. My wife will tell you. Ask her. Well, let's don't ask her, okay? But I play it all the time. Now, this one, my fingers might get just a little bit of sore, and I think that is probably tied to the fact that this nut's got just a shade bit of height to it that probably could come down a little bit and get this intonation a little bit better, okay? But it's good. It's good right now, but I think it could be better, all right? Now, that kind of gets out of the way my opinion about things that I think I want to do to this guitar, all right? Now, I'm not selling this. So when you quit seeing me make YouTube videos, I've gone to the great beyond, all right? At which point, this guitar is going to go to somebody who really wants and appreciates it in my family, all right? Because this thing it's a beautiful beast. That's the only way I know to put it. And it's a very special guitar for the historical reason, the fact that they only made like 141 of these things in the States. And when they started reproducing them again over in Indonesia at the custom shop, they paid attention to what they were doing, the level of detail. You hear stories about the pick guard lifting on some of these Epiphones, be a little notorious for it, and I think Gibson's a little notorious for it too. I haven't had any problem out of this one. No lift on this pick guard at all. It is stunningly beautiful guitar, and I can tell that there's a matching pieces of spruce here for the top, but I mean the color, you can see that. Can you see any difference in color from either side of this of the sound hole? I can't. They match that up beautifully on this guitar. It is absolutely beautiful. So from a craftsmanship standpoint, the braces inside, nice, shaved the way they should be to voice this top. I wouldn't change anything on shaving the braces at all. You know, I've said this before. There are guitars that you pick up and you get the bulk of the sound is right here. Okay? Coming from here. And then there, you know you've landed on something when you pick a guitar up and you strum it. And you can hear it all over the guitar. Is there a word for that, somebody? Because if there is, I'd like to know what it is. I'd like to quit just paraphrasing this and use the right term. But when you strum a chord on this, you hear it throughout the whole guitar. It's just, I don't know how to explain that. But it is just, it's amazing. And so the clarity of the notes when you pick, okay? I love those bass notes. It's got some power and punch to it. It's not as powerful and punchy as the inspired by Gibson Hummingbird, but remember that's mahogany back and sides on that one. This is rosewood Ovangkol. It's got its own blend. I'd like to say that I think what I would say is this: if you plan to play your guitar on a daily basis and you can only get one or the other, from a player standpoint, you're probably going to get the inspired by Gibson Hummingbird. if you have room in your budget to get both, get them, because this has a place in the lineup from a music writing standpoint. This would be my strummer right here from a strumming standpoint with a pick. Songs that I'm going to use, that I'm going to pick. I'm probably going to lean more towards using this Excellente for that, because when I fingerstyle it, it gets a little quiet. Okay, not super quiet, but it just gets softer. And some fingerstyle music would work well on here. It has a sweet sound for fingerstyle as well, as long as you're driving for a more soft return. You know what I mean? This is the guitar I would use for a John Prine song like that one. This is a one that I would use, you know, if you're someone who plays your guitar in your church, that kind of thing. This is probably one that I would pick for something like that, because what's that song called? It just seems to suit that genre of music, you know what I mean? So it's probably not something that you're going to do for a it doesn't feel like it's really suited so much for that. However, I can get my Epiphone inspired by Gibson Hummingbird out, and it seems to burn that down. You know what I mean? Because it has a much the mahogany lends itself, and even though the back and the sides probably not the massive contributor to the sound, it does kind of direct the tone. I think maybe more so than many people think. So that mahogany, Sitka spruce top, mahogany back and sides seems to really suit some digging on fingerstyle. You know what I mean? This and rosewood, but does have its place. Okay, and this Epiphone Excellente may be the beast of the century for Epiphone in name, and I say that because this Excellente was originally an Epiphone. Epiphone are the ones that actually designed and manufactured this instrument. It was not Gibson, okay? So it was done under the Epiphone banner. And so you can Right now, you can go to Gibson's website and you can see a Frontier, an Epiphone Frontier built in Montana. And someday, because the Frontier is an Epiphone guitar, some point you might, I don't know if they're going to do this Excellente in Montana ever, which is one of the reasons why I picked this up. Because I thought, I've watched a few videos on this thing and it seems like a good dice roll to me. Plus, if I go to Sweetwater, and they don't pay me, folks, I get nothing from Sweetwater. Well, I get a lot from Sweetwater, but I'm writing them checks, you know what I mean? But I know if I'm going to order from those folks, that if I tell them, hey, here's what I want, and here's what I want it to be when it arrives at my house, that they're going to put it in the shop back there and make it happen. And when I get the guitar, the only thing I wonder is, does UPS stand for oops, or does it stand for something else? Because that's the only concern I have when I get a guitar shipped to me from Sweetwater, is the delivery company. I've never had an issue, but I was very concerned about this one because there's such a lead time on getting these instruments. Mine came in, and I did not want to have to go through that again. But when I got it, it was absolutely perfect, okay, in every way. And they picked me out one that was beautiful. There's not a flaw on this guitar, all right? And that's the reason I deal with them. Now, I'm going to give you an example. When I do a review back here on this Gibson Les Paul Jr., because I am going to do a full review on it, I'm going to tell you about the people I bought it from and some of the deception that came my way with that guitar. It was not flaw-free, let's say. And that really frustrated me. That's why, folks, normally, every now and again, I'll have a little delay and I'll go, well, I don't know, I'm getting $300 off this brand spanking new guitar. And that's not easy to do with Gibson because they got a price and that's the price. You know what I mean? It's not like you can negotiate that unless they're used instruments. Well, I'll give you the details on that when I do a review on it. But the music company up in the Northeast that sent that guitar to me, about half shyster, in my opinion. Now, is it still a fine playing guitar? Yes, but cosmetically, it's got a few issues, and they didn't tell me a thing about that. They listed it as brand new. And so for that, I'm going to get on YouTube and scream to the top of my lungs about these folks and tell you don't do business with them. Sweetwater, however, has never, ever, and I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 guitars, half of which were bought from Sweetwater. Never a problem. Well, Sweetwater and Scott Baxendale, two people I buy guitars from. But this guitar arrived mint as mint can possibly be. It was set up like I asked them. I wish they'd have taken a little relief out of this neck, but to be honest with you, it was only this past week that I took that relief out of the neck. I owned this guitar for 10 months, and I finally just said, this is not what, I would rather have this a little less relief in the neck. I mean, it just, after 10 months of playing, okay? So it wasn't like it was, I got the guitar and went, oh wow, this isn't any good. No, that's not what happened. I actually played this guitar quite a long while before I decided, okay, here's what I think I need to do. But this instrument, folks, it's all that and a bag of chips. It is all that and a bag of chips. But you have to remember, it's Ovangkol back insides, so you're not going to get, in my opinion, now a lot of folks say, well, that rosewood just sounds a little bassier. It does have a little more, the rosewood does have a little more that a hint of that bassier tone to it than, say, a mahogany. But when you pick up a Gibson J45, that thing's got punch, a deep, deep punch, and that's mahogany. Well, not all of the J45s are mahogany, but because I did have a Gibson J45 Regal that was a rosewood back and sides. But I always, to my ear playing, rosewood always sounded a little softer. And I'm not opposed to softer. I'm not 20 years old anymore playing in a rock band, okay? But I'm not opposed to softer at all. But the mahogany just has that heat sound to it, a little hotter sound to it to me, over when it's underneath the Sitka spruce top. So, but this guitar 10 months later, yeah, I'm in love. If you want to know the truth. Let me see if I can do this thing without messing it up. I don't make this chord a lot. This chord right here. Yeah, it's a nice guitar, folks. Just kind of hit a lick on a tune. And folks, you can hear the sustain on this guitar. It's pretty incredible. I would buy it again, but I think the last time I looked, they were up to like 1,500 or maybe even 16 in some places. They're getting more and more popular because, well, for one thing, there's not as many of them out there as you might think. So they're not that easy to get your hands on. So if you can get your hands on one, I don't know how you can go wrong. And if you like a softer tone, I'd get this over the Hummingbird. It's just that, well, I'm at a place in my life now where I can have both tones. You know what I mean? For many, many years when I was trying to feed a family, a whole entire family, I couldn't do that. I mean, I was lucky to have one guitar, and then it was, as long as it had strings on it, I was happy, right? But I didn't get back to seriously playing guitar again, or even trying, until 4 or 5 years ago. That was when I started back playing again, and because I had put the guitar down for years and not picked it back up. So And I didn't know how to do any fingerstyle back then. So, but anyway, folks, I'm not going to keep you. I did want to do a 10 months later and tell you that I'm in love with the guitar. I'm absolutely in love with it. I'm still in love with it. I think it is phenomenally built, this guitar. I think it's absolutely beautiful and stunning. There's nothing to compare it to. Okay, I don't know of another way to put that. There is no counterpart to this guitar out there, I don't think. At least in my mind, there's no counterpart to it. If you went down not the Excellente, this is the Excellente, but the what's the other one? The Frontier. That's maple back inside, so it's going to be a little brighter and a little different. So there's really nothing to compare this to. It just compares to itself. But I'm going to tell you something, folks. This is a very impressive guitar. But I have had time to calm down. I had to tell you, there's one other thing I'm going to do, which is try to deal a little bit. I like a guitar that, especially on my strumming guitars, where I'm using a pick, I like that intonation to be about as perfect as it can be, with the action about as low as is reasonably possible, without drowning notes out and buzzing. You know what I mean? Because I don't want to have to put a lot of effort into fretting a guitar. It's already difficult enough on an acoustic, and for those of you that are new to acoustic, you obviously know what I mean. Those of you that's been playing a long time, I know you have fond memories of how bad your fingers hurt when you played. The worst thing you can do, when we were kids, we had those guitars that were not easy to fret, and that's what I started on. So your fingers within about a week were bleeding, and then about 2 weeks later you got to where you could touch your guitar again. Beautiful sounding guitar. I think it's better with a pick. It does have some fingerstyle quality about it. Your string spacing is perfectly fine for fingerstyle. Nothing wrong with that. You can see that the string spacing is perfectly fine for fingerstyle, for fast fingerstyle, for slow fingerstyle. Yeah, it's all that in a bag of chips. It still is, and I still think it is, and I think it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful guitar that has a very, very hospitable sound, a very, very good sound. If you paid what this thing is actually probably worth, you wouldn't be near $1,500. You would probably be, if you look at all the appointments that were done on the guitar and how well it's constructed, you are probably looking at around $5,000. Maybe even higher. If you look at some of these more highly appointed guitars, you're probably over $5,000 on most of them. Okay, you've tipped that $5,000 scale. This guitar will hold its own with any of those, in my opinion. And but it's an interesting combination. The rosewood family Ovangkol back and sides with a maple and walnut neck. That's an interesting combination. And I don't know how much that plays into the sound, this neck, but who knows? But you heard the guitar, you heard it picked, and you heard it strummed, and you go, well, you don't have a mic pointed at the 12th fret and all that kind of crap. But no, I don't. I got one microphone in this little studio right here, folks, and you're looking at it, and that's what I use. And then when I go back and EQ it, I got a set of pretty high-end studio headphones. Now, I've owned a recording studio, so I know what good studio monitors are, and headphones never are studio monitors. They're not even really in the same ballpark. But these are going to be as close as any headphones made out there on the market. So I always try to dial in what I'm hearing right here in this studio. That is an advantage. So to put a microphone in front of a guitar and strum it and go, well, you're hearing what I'm hearing, not necessarily, okay? There's too many things that go into that. And I'm more about making sure it gets heard. And then if I need to dial something, I'll dial it so that you're hearing what I'm hearing. I'm not trying to put a bunch of fluff in anything. I'm just trying to get across what it is that I'm experiencing here. And let me tell you the number one thing with this guitar that I think is important. I hear that all up and down this guitar, okay? Now, if you've never thought about that, you ought to think about it. A quality guitar does that. A quality guitar does that. Sound emanates from the whole entire guitar. All right, top, back, sides, neck. I hear it all over this thing. That is a well designed and built guitar. Try to keep in mind the humidipacks if you've not done that. If you do that, then congratulations. If you've never ruined a guitar, God bless you. I wished I'd have known you before I ruined that J45, but I did. But these people aren't paying me anything, but they work, okay? I haven't measured the humidity in these cases. I watched YouTube videos and watched somebody else do it. That's more money I got to go spend to check every little detail, but I've seen enough videos to realize these things actually do work, and they do keep your guitar humidified properly, and that's a big, big, big deal. One in the neck, down in the neck pocket of your case, and the saddle between 2 and 3 strings, and then loop the other one down inside between 4 and 5 there, and put her to bed for the night. All right. And she will serve you faithfully. All right. You know what gets us in trouble with our guitars is lack of attention to detail. Anyway, I think I've said enough about all that. I do appreciate you joining. I hope you found the video beneficial. If you have any questions at all, leave them in the comments or shoot me an email. I put my email at the bottom of every description. And I'm not opposed to somebody sending me an email. And if I can answer you, I will. If I can't, I'll find somebody who can. And we'll get you an answer, okay? But I did have to straighten some specs out on this guitar. And I said that in the first video. So if any of you out there haven't seen the first video, you might want to go back and take a look at it. Now, was I a little too excited in that video? Probably. But originally, now I don't think you'll see it these days, but originally, 10 months ago, almost a year ago when I started looking at these, this was called out, pretty much these inlays, as plastic. They didn't call them plastic. They called them something else. I can't remember what it was, but it's a fancy word for plastic. Anyway, I contacted Gibson over that and said, hey, you realize what your brothers over at Epiphone are saying about that guitar? They're calling this out as basically plastic inlays, and this sure looks like mother of pearl to me. And so Gibson contacted me back. The guy's name was, I remember his name, Steve. And he said, no. He said, that's all those inlays you see are mother of pearl. So these blocked inlays that you see here, these crown blocks, It's all mother of pearl. You know, that's much better. I think that plastic will shrink over time if you have plastic, and the plastic inlays are not going to be in there for the long haul. Plus, plastic's plastic, and there's enough plastic in the world. I'd really rather have mother of pearl, right? So I think it's much more beautiful, that mother of pearl. And if I hold it right, you can probably see some of the reflection off that mother of pearl. I hope that video is not blurring right now. As a matter of fact, I need to make sure it's not. No, it's not. Okay. But I don't know if you can see, if I can get it to kind of reflect in that light a little bit, but those inlays are absolutely beautiful. And look at that one on the headstock. I wish that had been all one piece right there, but nonetheless, it's still absolutely beautiful. Somebody put the time and effort into it because they are very well centered in the frets perfectly. And the frets on this guitar were done outstanding. They're just amazing. Take care of your friends. Take care of your family. We'll see you next time. God bless.